Welcome to the deep dive. Today we're looking at something pretty fascinating, photobiomodulation, PBM for short.
That's right. And it's essentially about using light.
Specific light though, isn't it? Red and near infrared.
Exactly. Usually in that 600 to, say, 1100 nanometer range. The idea is it can potentially help the body heal, maybe even regenerate tissues.
Which sounds almost sci-fi, but the science is building. And we know you're keen to get up to speed quickly on muscle health, regeneration, that whole area.
Absolutely. So our mission today is to really explore the science behind PBM specifically for muscles. We'll focus on the positive, compelling research out there.
Great. Let's start with the problem itself. Muscle issues, fatigue, weakness, they affect so many people.
They really do. It can interfere with just, daily life. Think about people with multiple sclerosis, for instance. Muscle fatigue can be a huge challenge for them.
And it's not just subjective tiredness,
Yeah.
right? There's a definition.
Yeah. Clinically, muscle fatigue is defined as a decrease in the maximal force a muscle can generate after some kind of fatiguing activity.
Okay. And where does that fatigue come from? Is it the brain, the muscle itself?
Well, it can be complex. There are central factors like signals from the brain, but also peripheral ones happening right in the muscle. Things like impaired mitochondrial function.
Mitochondria, the powerhouses of the cell.
Exactly. So researchers are always looking for effective ways to target this fatigue, whatever the origin.
Which brings us back to PBM. How could shining light on a muscle possibly help with this? What's the science?
Okay, so the main proposed mechanism is pretty interesting. It's thought that this red or near-infrared light gets absorbed by something specific inside those mitochondria.
Inside the powerhouses, what absorbs it?
A key enzyme, a protein called cytochrome C oxidase.
Cytochrome C oxidase. Okay, and what happens when it absorbs the light?
Well, that absorption isn't passive. It seems to kickstart a whole chain of positive events within the cell.
A chain reaction? Like what?
It gives the mitochondria a boost, essentially, enhances their function, leading to more ATP production.
GTP, the cell's energy currency? Makes sense.
Right. And it also seems to increase nitric oxide production.
Nitric oxide, that helps with blood flow.
Precisely. It helps dilate blood vessels,
Yeah.
improving oxygen delivery. Plus, you see increases in intracellular calcium, which is vital for muscle contraction, among other things.
Okay, so better energy, better blood flow, optimized cell processes.
Exactly. The net effect seems to be improved cell function and, importantly, reduced cell death, or apoptosis. It's like fine-tuning the muscle's engine and fuel lines.
Optimizing the power supply. I like that analogy.
And there's a crucial point here. PBM often shows a biphasic dose response,
Biphasic, meaning
meaning there's a sweet spot. In optimal dose range, too little light might not do much, but surprisingly, too much light can actually reduce the benefit.
so more isn't always better. Getting the dose right is key.
Definitely key. And you can see how boosting mitochondrial function could be relevant for conditions like MS, where fatigue is prominent, but also for, athletes or anyone experiencing exercise-induced fatigue.
Absolutely. That direct impact on energy production seems really promising.
Yeah.
So let's look at some specifics. What has the research actually shown, say, for people with MS?
There's some really encouraging work. One study, for example, investigated PBM's effects on muscle function in people with mild to moderate MS. It was a well-designed, randomized, placebo-controlled trial, 2 parts.
Okay, to break it down for us, what did they do in part one?
In part 1, they looked at short-term effects. They applied different PBM doses, 40, 80, or 120 joules, to the tibialis anterior muscle that's in the lower leg, helps lift the foot.
Right. And what were they measuring?
Muscle force recovery after a fatiguing task, basically how quickly the muscle bounced back. And they found the highest dose, the 120 joules.
Let me guess, it helped.
Significantly improved force recovery compared to the placebo group. The muscle bounced back faster.
Wow, that's quite a direct effect. So light helped short-term recovery. What about longer term? That was part 2.
Yes. In part 2, they followed a group for 2 weeks. Participants received PBM using their individual best dose identified in part 1.
Okay, personalized treatment. And what do they measure then?
They looked at muscle strength changes, endurance time, how long they could hold a contraction and fatigue levels in that same muscle.
And the results?
Again, quite positive. The active PBM group showed a significant increase in muscle strength, not just from their baseline, but also compared to the placebo group.
So consistent, personalized PBM actually made the muscle stronger over 2 weeks. That seems really important.
It really does. The study concluded that these individualized doses might improve muscle performance, both recovery and strength, in this MS population. It suggests PBM could be a novel therapeutic tool.
A new tool in the toolbox, potentially alongside other therapies. Did they see any other benefits beyond that specific muscle?
Interestingly, yes, the active PBM group also significantly improved how far they could walk in a 2-minute walk test. That's a standard mobility measure.
Better walking distance, too. That's a functional improvement.
Exactly. And there were also trends towards better quality of life and manual dexterity, though those didn't quite hit statistical significance in this study. Suggests maybe more research is needed there.
Still, very promising findings for people dealing with MS. Okay, let's pivot slightly. What about sports and general exercise? That's another huge area for muscle health.
Absolutely. And PBM is getting a lot of attention there. It's generally used in two ways. Either before exercise as a sort of preconditioning,
Priming the muscles?
kind of,
Uh.
or after exercise to aid recovery. The goals are usually enhancing performance or speeding up that repair process.
Makes sense. Prepare better, recover faster.
Have studies looked at this?
Oh, yes. Loads of clinical trials. They've studied everyone from untrained individuals to elite athletes using all sorts of PBM devices, lasers, LEDs, combinations, and different wavelengths, red, near-infrared, sometimes mixed.
So what are the big takeaways from all that research? Any consistent findings?
Well, reviews suggest PBM might actually help increase muscle mass gains when combined with training.
Really, more muscle growth. That's what some studies indicate. And it's also been shown to decrease markers of inflammation and oxidative stress in muscle samples taken after exercise. Those are key factors in muscle damage and soreness.
Less damage, potentially less soreness. What else have they measured?
All sorts of things. Muscle fatigue rates, number of reps people can do, muscle force or torque, muscle size, creatine kinase levels. That's a common marker for muscle damage and that delayed onset muscle soreness, DOMS.
Okay, let's get concrete. Can you give some examples of these positive effects, maybe focusing on the lower limbs, short-term effects first?
Sure. We've seen studies using, say, 830 nanometer lasers or LED combinations like 660 and 850 nanometers, showing lower blood lactate and creatine kinase after intense cycling tests, less metabolic stress and damage markers.
Okay, less biochemical evidence of fatigue and damage.
Right. Another example, using a mix of 905 nanometer lasers plus 640 and 875 nanometer LEDs led to better maximum voluntary isometric contraction peak strength and also reduced CK and DOMS.
So better immediate strength and less soreness later. Any others?
Yep. 810 nanometer lasers have shown increased max contraction strength, decreased lactate, and CK. LED therapy with 660 and 850 nanometers has been found to reduce the drop in knee extensor strength after fatigue.
So it helps maintain strength during exertion.
Seems like it. And in terms of reps, studies using 808 nanometer lasers or that 660 or 850 LED combo showed people could do more knee extensions. Even ankle strength, a 780 nanometer laser improved peak torque there.
It's hitting multiple performance markers. Does it affect overall fitness too, like cardio?
Some studies suggest it might. Research using 850 nanometer lasers has reported improved peak oxygen uptake, better cardiovascular efficiency during treadmill running.
Interesting. What about specific sports applications?
Well, one study with rugby players using lasers and LEDs found faster average sprint times, lower fatigue index over repeated sprints, and smaller increases in blood lactate.
So better performance under repeat high intensity.
Exactly. And another with pro volleyball players found LED therapy helped prevent big spikes in CK levels after matches.
Protecting against damage.
Seems that way. And studies involving treadmill running have shown things like increased oxygen uptake, longer running times, prevention of increases in damage markers like LDH and CK, even reduced markers of oxidative stress using 810 nanometer lasers.
Wow. So lots of short-term benefits reported. What about the long haul? If you combine PBM with training over weeks or months?
That's where it gets really interesting too, the chronic adaptations. Studies have shown that using PBM consistently with training can lead to greater strength gains.
Like lifting heavier weights?
Yeah, increased 1-rep max in leg press, for example, using 808 nanometer lasers. Also improved knee extensor peak torque after training. That same wavelength was linked to less fatigue development in knee extensors after cycle training.
So stronger and more fatigue resistant over time. You mentioned muscle growth earlier, too.
Yes, there was a fascinating case study on identical twins. The twin using 850 nanometer LEDs after leg training showed greater increases in max lift, more muscle hypertrophy.
Actual muscle growth.
Yes, measured muscle growth. Plus, lower CK and fatigue, and even favorable changes in gene expression related to muscle building and recovery compared to the twin who trained without PBM.
Identical twins. That's a powerful comparison. Any other long-term findings?
Uh-huh. Increased muscle thickness and strength with 810 nanometer lasers before eccentric training. Even in older women, 808 nanometer lasers led to more gains in work capacity, peak force, and power after leg extension training.
So benefits across different age groups, too.
It seems so. Another study found applying PBM before every training session using combined lasers and LEDs boosted 1RM strength in leg press and extension and also improved peak torque in max contractions.
Okay, so a pretty consistent picture of potential benefits, both acute and chronic. What about the light itself? You mentioned different wavelengths, or some better than others.
The positive research tends to cluster around specific ranges. Red light, typically around 630 to 660 nanometers, and near infrared, often between, say, 808 and 950 nanometers.
And is one preferred?
Near infrared often gets highlighted because it penetrates deeper into the tissue. So for targeting muscles, that deeper penetration can be an advantage. But we're also seeing more use of mixed wavelengths, combining red and NIR, trying to get the best of both.
Interesting. And, it's worth noting that the wavelengths often cited in this positive research, like 810 millimeters and also red light around 635 millimeters, are utilized in technologies like those developed by MedWave Group.
That's right. Those wavelengths fall squarely within the ranges, showing promise in these studies.
Now, you mentioned earlier that dose is critical, that biphasic response. But the studies seem to use a lot of different parameters, right? Power, energy, treatment area.
Absolutely. There's definitely variability. Different devices, different targets, different study goals. It makes direct comparison tricky sometimes.
So how do we figure out the right dose?
Well, researchers are working on that. By reviewing large numbers of studies, they're starting to identify potential therapeutic windows for specific application.
PBM windows, like optimal energy ranges.
Kinda. For example, for acute effects on the biceps muscle, positive results seem associated with total energy between maybe 20 and 80 joules. For the bigger quadriceps muscle, that window might be wider, say 56 to 315 joules.
Okay, different muscles, different energy needs.
Exactly. And for whole body type exercise like treadmill running, where they might treat the legs, maybe trunk and arms too, positive effects are seen with total energies from roughly 360 up to 510 joules.
So these windows reinforce that idea, not too little, not too much.
Precisely. It underlines that biphasic dose response. Finding the optimal range is really crucial for getting the best results, and that's vital information for anyone developing PBM applications like MedWave Group, focusing on those effective wavelengths like 635 millimeters and 810 millimeter.
This has been incredibly informative, a real deep dive into the science of photobiomodulation for muscles. It's pretty clear there's a lot of compelling positive research here.
There really is. Across different conditions like MS and in sports performance and recovery, PBM shows significant promise for improving muscle function. And companies focusing on these well-studied wavelengths are certainly building on a solid foundation of research.
And for you listening, we really hope this exploration has given you some valuable insights into this exciting field.
Definitely. It leaves us with a thought, though, doesn't it? Given all this evidence, how might PBM truly change the game for muscle health, for recovery, for rehabilitation down the road?
Yeah, what's the future look like?
And what are the next big research questions we need to answer to really optimize it, to unlock its full potential?
Good questions. Definitely food for thought. We really encourage you to keep exploring this topic. Thanks so much for joining us on this deep dive.